This is a Rogue Media Network podcast.
Women of Interest is your backstage pass to the stories behind the success.
Get ready to be inspired and empowered as we highlight the resilience, determination, and passion of women who embody the heart and the spirit of Texas.
Welcome.
Welcome.
We are here with Kristi Hayes.
That's right.
We're very excited to have you.
Thanks for having me.
I've wanted to have you on the show after an amazing feature story that we had in the magazine. That was very, very deep. You were featured on a photo on top of one of the buildings downtown. And we had a lot going on in that magazine. It was a People of Waco in our November issue. And you were featured with 3 other women that aren't here, but I want to have them on separately because I wanted to feature just you today and talk to everything that you're doing. And I just welcome you here and thank you so much.
Thank you
for doing what you're doing for the Waco community.
Thank you. And thank you for that WACOAN spread and for the people who you let me be with in that. They are some of the most amazing women. Emily right here too, just collaboration with the whole human trafficking. Like we could not do it without strong, amazing women and men. Mm-hmm. But I loved that piece. And I loved your photographer too, because she was so great. She's like, okay, now we're going to do like a tough picture. And I'm like, I don't even know. So I didn't even know how to do that. Face. And when I got it back, I was like, okay. I was like, we're all texting each other. I was like, look at us. I was like, we look tough.
It was, so what came about, I had actually gotten a call from one of my friends, Alicia Joyce.
Oh, yeah.
Yes. She said, you need to do a story on these badass women. Mm-hmm. And I said, oh, okay, tell me more. And she said, do you know these women? Do you know her? Because I know her. She's one of my good friends. And you need to do this story right now. It's important. Sweet. And I said, well, we've done a story a little bit. Tell me what's different. Mm-hmm. Because we've done human trafficking stories before. But tell me what is different about this one. She goes, because they are collaborating. They're making with the Advocacy Center, with the City of Waco, with Unbound now. And it is an effort that is a coalition. So it wasn't just about one specific nonprofit, but with everything that is coming together. So that's what I wanted that story to be, about. And all of y'all up on that building kind of like, hey, we are really, really trying to work together here and make a real difference.
Your writer captured it perfectly. And I will say, like, I lead a lot of different counties, and I always say Waco is the magical place because the collaboration here is like no other. And really, I could text any of those women or anyone really in our coalition like in the middle of the night at 10:30. I have done that before and been like, we have this, we have that, and they will get back to me. And I've just never seen anything quite like it, just of no one really caring who gets the credit, but just doing it together for the mission. It warms my heart so much. I only love team. I don't ever want to do anything by myself. I'm a sports girl at heart, which we kind of talked about, but team is everything. And so I just felt very honored to be in that. Thank you. And just for those amazing women who were beside me and who work with us every day. So,
well, Susan, our writer, who I knew I wanted Susan to write it because she just digs deep and she finds all of the good stuff the good questions to ask and get into the meat of the story. But she came up to the WACOAN and she said, I just need you to know that this story will scare the shit out of you. And so I said, okay. She goes, I'm not kidding. I said, okay. And but I'm not afraid of that.
Yeah.
Because she's
good.
very honest.
I like her. Yeah.
Because she's like, I didn't know this was going on here, and your readers need to know. And then she also said, your daughter needs to know about this kind of stuff. And I hope your readers take it seriously.
Have you gotten good feedback?
I mean,
on it?
people, once it started coming out, people were sharing and talking about it. And I think it's just something that I need to know I need to have out on that website all of the time. And it needs to be, and we're working on that because we have so much backlog on our website that we have so much information. So we're kind of redoing it so that it's more accessible. So, yeah.
So, okay. So, Kristi, you and I met. When did you move here? I can't remember. We
The
were
week
introduced.
that the world shut down, COVID. We literally the
2020.
2020. So
Okay.
when the world shut down, we moved here that week. When my husband moved here that week, we were going to stay in Colorado and finish out school. But as you know, school did not happen. So
it feels like a lifetime ago.
I always tell people, they're like, well, when did you move to Waco? I'm like, I don't know, like last year. And I'm like, oh, wait, I mean, 5 years.
Yeah.
It's weird.
Yeah.
It feels like a long time ago.
Yeah.
And also a short time ago.
Right.
Were you, okay, go ahead.
Yeah. Well, so we met through you moved in to the neighborhood in Cameron Park. So like you're super central to one of my good friends and board president, Genevieve Peel. And I can't remember love
takes
the
care
Peels.
of me.
Yeah,
deeply.
she probably does.
With dinners
Uh-huh.
and all the things.
Meal preps and all the things.
Yes.
But I don't think it was her that introduced us. I actually think I got a text from, it could have been maybe Becky Shepard or
also
I
an
love
amazing
her
cook.
too.
Yeah.
yeah. What is
yeah.
it?
I
We
know.
do have a lot of cook friends.
Well, I do. It's because I'm always running hot, and so they help me eat. So they're like, "Do you need this? Do you need this? Do you need?" I mean, just the most amazing people.
So we kind of start walking and talking, and you really weren't sure what you wanted to do. You had a podcast. You had just released a book, the Lunchbox Notes, and you were passionate about a lot of things, but why take on, because Susan Peters, who's long time, I mean, like started Unbound, started the coalition, and then you come along and you kind of take the baton from her and run with it. What made you decide to like jump into this?
We always joke when Susan asks you to do something, you can't really say no. So prior, entrepreneur, I've done a lot of random things, and we always joke. They're like, what is Kristi going to do next? Was youth pastor for years, was an entrepreneur for years, wrote a book, but my heart is always vulnerable populations. So always, I prayed that prayer, that cliche prayer that everyone, prays, like, God, help me. What breaks your heart? I want it to break mine. And there was a moment when I kind of let down everything and just surrendered everything, right when I had Carter May about 13 years ago. And God just just broke my heart open for just the vulnerable. And so before we had moved here, I lived in Colorado, and our business was an apparel business. We, the Lunchbox Note that my husband wrote, he wrote on a Sharpie, just on literally a napkin. My son was having some trouble on the playground. He was kind of getting bullied. And it said, be strong, protect the weak, love everyone. And that became our mission for our family. And it just spiraled. People were like, oh my gosh, can that be our mission? Can we take that? Can you make t-shirts? Can you make sweatshirts? Da, 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 da. And so I'm like, sure, why not? I've never done that before, but why don't we do that? And so my heart was always, I loved the homeless so much. And I had a friend, a mentor who would take me and go and spend time with the homeless and just live life with them. And they were my heart at the time. And so I was like, how can we do this business but empower them to in some way be a part of that? And so we moved to Colorado, and I was like, I think I'm going to start a company that does this apparel, and we're going to employ homeless to screen print our things. And my husband's like, okay, that sounds awesome, but we literally just moved to Colorado. You don't know how to screen print. You don't know any homeless people here. Like, what are you going to do? So we went to church that week, and this lady, I randomly met her. I mean, nothing's random, but she said, what do you do? And I told her, and I said, she goes, are you looking for a new printing place to print your apparel? And I was like, kind of. And she's like, I don't know if this would interest you. She's like, it's a little, different. She's like, but we have a homeless shelter that I work for, and in the back they have a printing, screen printing business that they employ their homeless. And I was like, yes, ma'am. And so literally the next day I call them. So we ran a business out of this homeless shelter for the last 3 years. And then I had a company that we would take families that maybe weren't in those spaces to help them love others who were different than them. And so that's what I was doing right before I came to Colorado, is helping these families go into these different spaces, go into this socks place, the homeless shelter, and get to know these people and how they're not that much different than the suburbia, world. We all have our own griefs, and sharing that, mutual kinship was something I was really passionate about. So when we moved here, it was kind of like, first of all, I was like, what are we doing in Waco? That was kind of a surprise to us. I've lived in Texas before, but I didn't know we'd be back. And was kind of just trying to find my footing of like, what are the nonprofits here? What are the I've never seen so many nonprofits in my life.
So many.
Per
so many
capita.
churches, so many nonprofits.
Churches,
so many pawn shops. So many tacos.
We
and
always
now
joke
car washes.
Exactly.
We all have clean cars.
Yes.
I do have a clean car, yes.
If there's two that open up, there's going to be a third. It was
incredible.
Happens, yes.
And so anyway, then met with Susan, and also my paths of so many different random things, but I worked on Capitol Hill and did some stuff in the White House. So that I do love that collaboration of like learning to just work with different people who are all for the same mission, but all have different expertise and so forth. And so anyway, she asked if I would come on and help lead the team. And I wanted to make sure it was a good fit and love it. And probably my most favorite job I've ever had. It's the sweet spot. Love leading the teams. We have such a great team. Love being able to collaborate with law enforcement and other partners. Yeah. It's like, I feel like I'm in my dream spot for sure.
And y'all have grown extensively. I think that's been really, really such a massive shift from where you began. And then it was on this kind of trajectory of growth, but like just being at the 10-year celebration for the coalition to see just how many Unbound interns and staff, it's huge. It's
been
really
cool
big.
To see. It's, we started in Waco and she started here, and I thought it was just either going to be in Waco, or she really thought it was going to be overseas at the time. And then she realized this was happening here in our community. So they started it here. And then fast forward 12 years, we're in 46 counties in Texas. I think 11, I don't know. I feel like they're popping up all the time, service areas. So I'm in Texas, we're in Houston and North Texas and Austin, and my purview is Austin, basically Waco to Austin. We have offices there that I go to Austin 2 days a week and meet with the team there. Work with the governor's office quite a bit. Louisiana, we have 2 offices in New Orleans, Baton Rouge. They just tapped us for the Super Bowl. So the NFL commissioner just gave our Louisiana team the Unsung Heroes Award yesterday.
Oh my gosh,
at the
amazing.
NFL. And I know. I just saw it on Instagram actually, and I was like, oh my gosh, this is amazing.
Wow.
There is just so much happening that sometimes we don't even know. We have a team in Mongolia who was speaking at like the National Council yesterday. I mean, it's wild. And so it has been fun, even since I've been there in the last 3 years, to see just kind of where it's going. It's been a fun ride. I love growth. Like, I'm a future thinker. And so for me, it is so fun. For people who on my staff are a little bit like, whoa, like you're going too fast. It could be, a little more stressful, but it's been really fun to come together. And when you have a great team, and we always say clear is kind. When we're communicating clearly, when we have high expectations and high support, it can work together really well. So.
Yeah.
That is great. So do you go and train each one, or are you just kind of overseeing? Kind of tell me what is the greatest need that you're, greatest need that you're seeing?
Yeah, I mean, there's so many things, and Emily can attest to this with her many years in this space. It just depends really what county. I mean, we have so many different needs for survivors, obviously. This year is the first time we've had to deal with like wait list and, making sure that there are enough advocates to be able to support those. I think we had in Waco alone, like people always say, like, does this really happen in Waco? We had 737 calls to our crisis hotline. So we have a 24/7 crisis hotline. So that's in McLennan County area. We have teams that do trainings in juvenile detentions. They're in there weekly to kids who are really they could fall through the cracks, and we don't want them to. So we want to make sure that they prevention. And so they see the red flags and go into middle schools and high schools. And we have our survivor services, and then we have our outreach and training to professionals. And that's kind of what Emily was talking about, our 10-year coalition, where we do, these bigger coalitions, but they meet in these subcommittees where we're actually figuring out the problem. So one of my favorite things is meeting with, honestly, law enforcement. We have them all around the table. So we're talking Homeland Security, FBI, local sheriff, PD, and we have something that we're working on, whether we have a runaway or this, and they're all putting their heads together to figure out how they can really help someone and come alongside each other. And they don't care what jurisdiction they're in. They're all helping each other. And that is so fun to watch these law enforcement say, hey, I can help you do this. You do this, but you get the credit for that. Okay, great. It is like magical to watch. And I really, when you ask like what I do, I really get to just kind of make sure things are happening, but we have such a good team. They really don't need me to do that. And I might put a couple fires out or those kind of things, but really watching our teams do the things is so incredible. And I really just get to be a part of what they're doing, which is really
So what has, because we're both moms, and I know that that's just part of the other layer of like our lives and stories, but how would you say this work? People ask Brett and I all the time, how has this work impacted your family? How has this work? What do you tell your children about the world? Are your children terrified to walk out of the door at night? And so I'd love to hear just your perspective on that, and how this has impacted your kids, how it's impacted your parenting. Like, yeah, how do you talk about the work? I mean, you've been exposing obviously them to vulnerable populations for a long time, but trafficking is a little different just because it is so violent and so hard. So how do you do that?
I mean, I don't know I'm doing it right, but I think you probably ask them in like 20 years when they're on a therapist couch and they're like, I think what I had some advice I've always been someone who's loved to work. And so I love it. And so I was listening to someone about, kind of that guilt that you feel sometimes when you're working and you have a high intense job, but then you also want to come home and be a mom and do makeup with your 13-year-old and watch funny Instagram memes with your 16-year-old. And the advice that I got was just like bring them as much into your work as you possibly can so they feel a part of it. Now that's hard when we're doing the gritty work and hear some of the terrible things. I'm not sharing some of the terrible stories that I can barely digest, of the girls who are, applying to come into our home for girls 12 to 17. These kids are my kids' age, 13-year-olds, who have experienced more trauma than I will ever see in my lifetime. And so, I'm not telling them those things, but we are talking about the world, and we're talking about, just the different ways that we can, as people who have, the means and the privilege and those kind of things, step into a world where we are always serving and giving and loving others well. And so that's really probably what it is, more of like it's our responsibility when something is wrong. When we see something, we do something. We have a saying in our house that is eyes wide, light shine. And I've said it to them since they were kindergartners till they are 16 years old. And it's just basically keep your eyes open to what is around you. And if you see something, let your light shine into that space. And so we probably have a lot of those conversations. And then we do have conversations about very specific social media. I mean, my poor kids are probably not going to have social media. I'm not saying that you can't have social media. Yeah. I'm just saying for my 13-year-old, that's probably not going to happen. I mean, I always tell her, I'm like, I'm so sorry, sweetheart. This is what I do. And at this moment in time, until we have until you get a little older or have a conversation, we'll get there when we get there. But there are some things that I see that probably do make me step back a little bit.
So if you were to, when she asked that question, what do you tell her? What are the reasons?
On social media? I think for her right now, I mean, we have kind of stayed like to the point where they didn't get phones until they were in 7th and 8th grade. And so for what I talk to her about on social media, and she doesn't even ask honestly to that, because I think she hears me enough talk about how there can be kids who are exploited on that, and not even that, just the pressure of like the social media and all the things, whether it be exploitation or something really terrible, it's all the pressures. And she has so many pressures right now with a rigorous school schedule. She's on a competitive, acrotumbling team and sports. I'm like, you don't need any more pressure that you have to, deal with. So now that has sufficed. My son just doesn't care. Like, he just doesn't care. He is fine, like watching, funny memes with me. But yeah.
What are you seeing through social media that's happening? Like if you were to tell a parent that might be listening, that one takeaway that, okay, we've seen this the most.
Yeah. I think it differs, and Emily, you can speak to this too, but I think one of the things that I would tell parents is just know what your kids' apps, know what they're on, even like video games, just have the conversations with them. It's like if someone comes into a video game, and I think this one gets missed a lot, that you don't know that wants to play with you. Dr. Battle, who's one of my dear friends and who was on that piece with me in the WACOAN, she's always like, you know, if there's a kid who's like, hey, I'm 13, I want to get in there. She's like, just in your mind, think it's like a 35-year-old on his mom's couch, like eating potato chips. Like, do not let that person in. And so I always say, just make sure you know, like, check their phones. Like, those are your phones. Like, you can check your kids' stuff. You can check your kids' texts and the apps they're on, and they're savvy and they can get around different things. But I think it's honestly having very honest conversations. I am not sneaky with saying, hey, Holden, can we look at some of this stuff? We're looking at it together. Hey, bud, I never want him to feel shame in anything. So we have very upfront conversations like, hey, if you see something or what, please come tell me. Like, let's talk about it. We're very open, very different than probably what we're used to when we were kids. Our parents didn't talk about those things. We are much more open to talking about life and, you know, sex and, you know, all
body
the
parts.
Body parts.
Just like, what are they?
All the things. So I do love that it feels more open, and I don't think that
just
they would
having
feel
the conversation.
shame. Having the conversation and then knowing what your kids, Dr. Battle always says when she gets the question, like, what's the app that helps your kid, you know, not see the things? And there's all the, you know, Bark app and Gab phone and all those things. But she's like, you parent are the best app. You.
Wow.
And if you don't know how to do social media, but your kids are on social media, go take a YouTube tutorial on what social media is. If they're on Snapchat, know
how to get around it,
how to get around it, what is happening in
Yeah.
that. So I just say, just don't be ignorant and be like, oh, I don't really know that. Know it.
Yeah,
figure it
I
out.
think it's when you learn about what's happening. So I know we've talked about Dawn Weibel with Talk More Tech Less. She's on staff with us, but she does a lot of training on digital wellness and prevention for school districts, and is on a council for online harms. And in DC, going to DC, you've done a story on her. But one of the things that we talk about often is when you start learning about this stuff, it's either like it's almost like you have your own trauma response as a parent, and you go into like, I can't even, so I just won't. Or you go into like fight and you just pull the whole thing.
Yeah. Burn all the phones. Like, get it.
Yeah.
And she's like, please don't do that.
Yeah.
Like, there's research actually coming out that if your child has had social media and is experienced some positive connection with it, and then you go and take all of that away, there is a huge like problem that it's going to create for you as a parent with connection and just the pushback, and they're being able to trust you again. So I think having, like you're saying, those open, honest conversations of like, hey, here's what I'm seeing going on. Like, what is it? Who are you FaceTiming at night? You know, before you go to bed, like, why is that so important for you? What's going on there? And could we try this instead? Or just start introducing boundaries and start introducing like a rewards based, if you put your phone up for this long, we're going to go get to do this. And they actually will feel better. Like, they start to just come alive more. So I think it's hard when you know this work. Yeah. Then you can like go crazy with like all the, you know, all parameters all the bad.
Right. And sometimes it's just, excuse me, the connection. Like, like when they're you know, we always joke, like my son, he doesn't need to go out with his friends because they can play video games on their headsets. Yeah. And for us, we always were like out, you know, with friends. Yes. And so just this, instead of like when my kid didn't have a phone and she would have all these friends who had phones, it was like no one even talks to me because they're just looking at their phone. Yeah. And so kind of that rewards, and this is super cheesy and I'm fine with it. We had Holden's friends come over for a summer party, and I asked them all their favorite candies. And I traded them their phones. I said, can I trade you your phone for a box of candy? And so they loved it. They were like, absolutely. They played basketball. It's not like they couldn't come get their phone and check it or whatever. But it was just like, they all knew like, oh, I love it. I get my candy. They went outside and played. They did all the things that like we used to do where they're interacting.
One thing.
Yeah.
Finding
it's so good.
I love that.
Yeah. What has been probably, I know you said you love teams. It's been super fulfilling and rewarding to like build these, to watch the growth, to watch the future kind of come to life in the present for what's happening. But what would you say has been the most exciting thing to watch about Waco specifically? You talk about it being this like magic place, but what really, can you like get super granular with it? Like, what is it that makes it that special space for this work?
I think I don't know what it is. I wish I knew what it was so I could do it in all the other places. I really think it is the people, that they really have a warm and caring heart, and they actually really care about people, and the relationships are easy. So again, like I said, I could text any one of those women in the middle of the night and say, I need this. Help me with this. We've got a runaway here. Hey, Liz, tell me about this case. It's this constant communication. It's this constant cheering for one another. It's celebrating each other's wins. It's just, I don't even know what it is. It's so magical, because I don't have that in some of the other counties that we work with. And I don't know if it's because of ego, or I'm not really sure, but the comfort level that everyone seems to have here of just being able to work together is pretty spectacular. And so I wish I could bottle it all up and put it in other places. But this, and I think it's just probably years, before I was here, like years of people collaborating with each other. I just get the gift of that. It's been years, and I get to step in and kind of just get to continue it. But it's been years of that, and years of people just, I don't know, feeling at home with each other, and that they can trust each other.
Yeah, it feels like maybe what is different too in some ways is that there is a common problem that like none of us are disagreeing, no matter what aisle, no matter what church, no matter what sphere of nonprofit work you're in, or which law enforcement department you work for. It's like, we know this is a common problem, and we've all agreed it's a problem. And in some other cities, there's still like some education of like, but it's really not that big of a deal. And it's really not happening that much. And it really doesn't have that big of an economic or sociological impact. And we've all agreed like a decade ago.
Yeah.
This is a problem, and we all have to do what we can to change it.
Which is pretty phenomenal. And that's what I was going to say. Maybe it's time. And then maybe it's what you're saying is we're actually going to do something, or we want to do something about it.
And it takes everybody.
And it takes a common, everyone is for the greater good here. And you said ego. And if you get that out and you want to make a better place to live, and you want to solve the problem, then better things happen for your community. And what a fabulous thing.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
It's pretty simple. You would think.
My mom always says, like, the quote, and I can't remember who it is attributed to, but, a lot more would get done if we didn't care who got the credit. And I really do feel like, and my husband's former law enforcement, and so sometimes law enforcement, that's hard to share information and do some of those different things together. But here they have figured it out, and I just get to watch it and ask, like, help on here, and everyone's helping. And I don't know, I think there is a trust factor here that's pretty awesome. And I think sometimes in other different spaces, it's harder maybe to build trust, and just being consistent, showing up. I think those are all.
Do you
things.
think it's our city's size?
I think that probably helps a little bit, that everybody everybody knows somebody who knows somebody. Like, for instance, Alicia, who knows me, who knows you, said, hey, you should do this piece. Now we're sitting here however many months later. Maybe. So I do think there is a little bit of difference when I'm in some of these bigger cities, that there is that, like, oh my gosh, I don't know her, but I know her grandma's whatever, and we had coffee, back in the day, and so she must be wonderful. I think it's that. Yeah.
A little bit.
What do you do to like relax? Because this is a lot of work, and you love to work, and you've got kids.
Yeah.
So how do you blow off steam?
Yeah. So my ritual is probably the same every weekend. So I have Sunday afternoons. I have a hiking group that I meet with every Sunday. So moving my body is always my biggest thing, whether it be like a hard workout. I'm a competitor, and so I always played sports growing up and in college. And so, when you get older, you're like, how do I do that? And so there are some ways that I enjoy doing that with just physical activity. For me, I'm an extrovert, and so just being with friends and family is so great. Baths, honestly. Like, I know that sounds so cheesy, but every Sunday night I take, a bath. So I do have.
Do you have like one of those things that go across it?
Girl.
Okay.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah. You know how many books I have dropped in? So I'm a big reader. And I go to the library, and you know how the little things like, you've saved this much money because you, and I was like, not me, because I literally dropped
that is wonderful
in there. So yeah, just those kind of things. But I really try to make sure that when I'm home, as much as I can, really be home and present. And my kids play a lot of sports. That's super fun for me. So going to those things. But the weekend is kind of my just space to move and be with people and kind of refuel for the week ahead, because you never know in this work what crisis is going to happen. Yeah.
Great question too. I like that. So what do you see? Is there a future of growing for what you do, or is it kind of you're just still doing it and y'all are growing in different cities, or is there something that you want to say to that you need help with or anything like that in the community? Or
yeah, I think in this community, it's just the collaboration that they already give is pretty amazing. So I can't ask for anything better than that. I think as we continue to grow in the other cities, we get asked all the time to come to different places because they see what we're doing in some of these different cities and making a difference. And so just expanding, but with expansion comes the money to have to do that. And so just, I think a lot of it is finding the people who want to support that, who want to come alongside and support that mission. For me, it's making sure that even those who support us feel very connected to our mission, and that, of course, I'll take a check. I'm never going to say no to that. But I also want them to feel very much a part. Like, we literally could not do the work that we do at 3 a.m. in the morning in a hospital room with a girl who was just raped. I don't get to have an advocate in that space or get to show up for those people if we don't have the funding to do that. And so as a nonprofit, I mean, many of us in here know, like, it takes a lot to do that. And so that is always what, I'm just wanting to bring people into the mission with us so that we can continue to grow, and that there is no one who falls through the cracks, and there is no one, we always are answering that 24/7 line and saying, yes, we will be there,
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
I love it. Well, we're certainly thankful. You are a woman of interest on our podcast and in our city. And so we're really, really grateful for the work that you do and the dedication and the competitiveness that you bring to, in the good way, the good kind, with teaming and with making things better. So thanks for being here.
Thanks for having me.
Thank
I feel
you
very honored
for
to be
being
on,
here.
so
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for what you do. Thank you.
Thanks.
And be sure to pick up a copy of your WACOAN or go to WACOAN.com.
Together, let's celebrate the strength, the grace, and the undeniable impact of the women who make our community great.
This has been a Rogue Media Network production.